Black Monday has arrived here in the NFL, and we saw many new coaching and GM jobs open up, so let's recap it all here today. I'm Jack Gertler of Pro Ball Pod. Let's get right into it. This is Jack coming in from the future, and obviously at this point, you've seen the breaking news. John Harbaugh, longtime Baltimore Ravens coach, has been fired, and this honestly changes the whole aspect of this video, as he's far from done his NFL coaching career. I'm expecting him to land a job, and it changes things for Baltimore. And honestly, I'm a little surprised, but I understand. I get it. You feel like you've hit the ceiling with the Harbaugh regime. Obviously, they've won to the Super Bowl. They've been a consistent playoff team, but after another year of underperformance, maybe they feel that shaking it up is best. He's a 63-year-old at this point. He's getting older, not getting any younger, and maybe a fresh coach could help motivate Lamar and all this team. But where do you go from here? There's a lot of different angles for Baltimore. I think Todd Monken is a nice pivot. He could promote it from internally, or obviously you could go pivot. I'd like Brian Flores for them as well, like an outside defensive coach that can really get them into gear defensively, get them back to their roots and what they were under Mike McDonald a couple of years ago, and sort of pivot the offense and defense while keeping Monken in place, which would be nice for Lamar. But overall, for Harbaugh's future, he definitely has a future. I think he's one of the best program builders in the league. I think he can come into a team, a win-now team, take them over the top. Example, the Giants, the Falcons. Obviously, they may not be in complete Super Bowl contender mode yet, but their rosters aren't barren. This isn't a committed long-term rebuild. The pieces are there. You just sort of got to put them together. And that's why I have high expectations for whoever lands Harbaugh. I think it's a big deal that he actually shook loose, and I'm a little surprised he did, honestly. But whoever lands him, I think, will be in good shape. He's going to be a very coveted coach. Obviously, with the Giants, they could build around Dart. They already have Malik Neighbors. I talk about that a little later in the video. As for the Falcons, same thing. They're pretty loaded. Obviously, quarterback situation is questionable, but I think Harbaugh can come in and immediately raise this team's floor, make them relevant in the NFC. The first major firing of the cycle was Cleveland Browns head coach Kevin Stefanski. And this one is a little controversial to me, honestly. I get it. It had been a rough 2 years for the Browns, but honestly, the idea that Stefanski gets scapegoated for the season and Andrew Berry just gets to survive just seems ridiculous to me. Obviously, I think Stefanski's shown his flashes in Cleveland. Obviously, that first year he went to the divisional round, nearly the AFC Championship game with Baker Mayfield, had a couple mediocre down years, and then had a major monster year with Joe Flacco, of all people. But I definitely think Stefanski is still a good offensive mind and is going to be a hot commodity at head coach in this cycle. Honestly, what did Stefanski in was Deshaun Watson trade. If we're being honest, he just never really found a quarterback after that. Obviously, he had the glimpse in the Joe Flacco year, but that was just lightning in a bottle. It wasn't really replicatable in the future. And obviously, I get why he got fired. But if I was Cleveland, I wouldn't keep Andrew Berry. I would have cleaned house, or I would have let Kevin Stefanski ride. Because honestly, I can't blame him for all this. Having to fix this quarterback situation has been tough, and there really hasn't been one available for him. Obviously, he gave up on Baker a little too early, and then obviously he went all in on Deshaun, which was a mistake. But ultimately, I feel like this Browns offense still shows great flashes, even despite the quarterback situation. Obviously, you have Isaiah Bond, who's looked surprisingly good for undrafted player. Harold Fannin Jr. is a breakout tight end. Stefanski is a good offensive mind, and I think it's going to be hard to replace him. I get it. It had been enough time to justify firing him, but me personally, I would have stuck with them. I'm guessing the Browns are going to pivot in the defensive mind direction most likely. I think they definitely have a lot of work to do, and they still have to develop a quarterback. But with Andrew Berry under the search, I'm a little worried if they can pull all that off. And the next big expected firing was obviously Raiders head coach Pete Carroll. And honestly, I can't say much about this. It's definitely justified. When you looked at this team, there's a lot of optimism going in the year. You have Geno Smith, who's coming off a great redemption arc in Seattle. He's been consistent. Ashton Jeanty, one of the most dominant players in college football. Brock Bowers coming off a superstar rookie year. There was something to work with there. There was a little bit of optimism that if Pete Carroll could coach up this defense, they could be a problem. But honestly, none of that happened this year. It was just disaster after disaster. Jeanty greatly underperformed, mainly due to that awful O-line. Jacoby Myers is gone, obviously. Bowers spent most of the year up and down with injuries. But if you're the Raiders, I think it makes sense to fire Pete Carroll. I get it. He's old, though. He's not going to be a part of a long-term rebuild. And now that you have the number one overall pick, you're going to have the chance to build around a franchise quarterback in Fernando Mendoza or Dante Moore, potentially. I think it's just better you hit the reset button altogether. I get it. Maybe Carroll would have been good if this team was contending, but they were the worst team in the league. So, simple as that. He shouldn't have stuck around if he had the number one overall pick. Now, obviously, they have a big decision to make. I think they have a little bit of cap room, and they're going to have a quarterback of the future coming in For coaches, I definitely think they have to do an offensive minded head coach. I think it should be a top priority to get someone in the building that can develop Fernando Mendoza, Dante Moore, etc. This offense, obviously, this defense needs a lot of work, but this offense feels like it has some fun potential in place if they can just build up that offensive line. And they need to make sure they do right by Fernando Mendoza. Tom Brady is the owner. He's going to have a big say in this search. And ultimately, there are a lot of fun offensive minds. Kevin Stefanski comes to mind, experienced head coach that can come right in. Obviously, Clint Kubiak from the Seahawks, it's a bit of an unknown. He's only been a super successful coordinator this year, but I think there's a lot of different directions you should go. But this is definitely one of the more appealing jobs in the market. I get it. You do have a little bit of a lot to go with the roster building wise, but you do get to handpick the number one overall pick, and you do have some fun, exciting players on offense. And next up, we have our first true Black Monday firing. It was Atlanta Falcons head coach Raheem Morris. While these other two were expected, he was maybe safe. I mean, obviously, they tied for first in the NFC South. They went on that little win streak, but honestly, I totally get booting Raheem Morris. I feel like this team has made so many questionable calls down the line. I get it. I like the hire coming in, but ultimately just hasn't lived up to the expectations, and the Falcons desperately need to clean house. I think if you're the Falcons, you're looking at this situation and you've seen a bunch of head scratchers. First, you pay Kirk Cousins a massive deal, then you draft Michael Penix, and then obviously that was a questionable decision in the draft. You move on to the next year. They used the extra first round pick on James Pierce. That looks like it worked out so far, but for a team that was looking to make a win now push, 8-9 is just not good enough. This should have been a year that the NFC South is wide open, and obviously, if things just go a little differently, you're the NFC South champions right now. It wasn't that hard of a division to win. And all things considered, this is just a massive underperformance when you look at the Falcons. I mean, decent O-line. Obviously, quarterback play shaky between Penix and Cousins, but I think both of them have some juice in the tank. You have one of the best playmakers in football in Bijan, Drake London, Mooney, Kyle Pitts, and all these guys are getting involved. Great offensive weapons. Defensively, you have a new fun duo of between James Pierce and their other rookie they got in the draft previous, Jalen Walker. And I think there's just a less to like here. And I think this team just underperformed. That's just the tough reality. I think this is a relatively appealing job. Obviously, there's a bit of the concern that, I mean, this team's already kind of built. So if you're looking to build something from the ground up, maybe this isn't a job for you. But I definitely think an offensive mind can come in here and things could get really scary really fast if Penix and Kirk, one or the two, work out. I think it's a weird situation, but I think outside of quarterback, you feel pretty secure in that you're going to have a solid roster going in. Expectations are going to be relatively high right out the gate. And overall, Raheem Morris, I think he definitely could have saved his job. He could have gone 50-50, but I totally respect the decision for Atlanta to just click the reset button on both coaching and GM. This roster was just, that was an unacceptable underperformance. Despite the 4-game win streak, they were out of it before December. And the last major firing of Black Monday, Cardinals head coach Jonathan Gannon after 3 seasons. And let's be honest, I get I liked what Gannon did this offseason. I think he did a decent job making this defense into a respectable unit. A lot of solid edge rushers, and obviously offense has playmakers. The issue on this team is just not necessarily talent. They're just not a 3-14 team to me. And the reality is that underperformance completely justifies the boot. Obviously, I think there's a lot to like. If you're coming into this Cardinals job, you start with McBride, Michael Wilson. You're hoping that you can get Marvin Harrison into the caliber player he was supposed to be going into the year. Shaky O-line, but you can fix it. And as for the defense, you have some solid pieces. So similar to Atlanta, this is not a from the studs rebuild. You are going to get a top 3 pick, which is a nice little perk, but you're not going to have to build this team up from the studs necessarily. The only elephant in the room, obviously, is the Kyler Murray situation. Are you going to ride with Kyler, or are you going to click the reset button completely and maybe go after some free agency options or even in the draft potentially? But overall, it's an appealing job. I definitely think it's one that some people are gonna want. Hopefully, I think that there's a lot of concern when it comes to Kyler Murray, but outside of that, you have a decent foundation in place. A lot of the money's been spent, but they're gonna have a little bit of cash to spend. Hopefully, they can shake up the O line. But obviously, answering the Kyler question is the biggest one. I think Gannon was totally justified in being fired. I am surprised GM survived though. I think that alignment should have been booted together, but obviously they had a different idea. But ultimately, this is not a 3-14 roster, and booting him was the only option here. So. And now that we've gone over Black Monday, let's just discuss the other 2 openings, the Giants and the Titans. They weren't fired Black Monday, but I do think they are some of the more appealing options. Obviously, if you're Tennessee, $100 million in cap space, Cam Ward, potential franchise quarterback in place already. There's a lot to like about that job. I'm guessing that they're going to bring in some sort of chief subordinate because Berganzi likes to align with those kind of players. Maybe Spags gets another chance. Maybe Matt Nagy gets another chance. Definitely an appealing job if you're Tennessee. Even though there is a lot of work to do, you're going to have a high draft pick and you're going to have a lot of money. So definitely high priority, build around Cam Ward. And as for the Giants, this is probably one of the most appealing jobs on the market because look at what you start with. Jackson Dart showed a ton of flashes his rookie year. Looks like he could already be the franchise guy. You have Scatterbo coming back healthy. You got Malik Neighbors in the building already. Your defense already has full of solid pieces. Brian Burns, Abdul Carter, Kayvon Thibodeau's here for another year. I think this defense underperformed, but I definitely think they have potential to be an elite unit. And on top of that, you're going to get a high draft pick. So you're going to get to add another blue chip player in this draft to the organization. And overall, that's super appealing, right? Going right into the gate, you're sitting pretty comfortable roster wise. And while this was a great underperformance year for the Giants, I definitely think they have potential to do a major bounce back if they hit this fire out of the park. And last but not least, we're going to talk about some guys that ended up being safe that maybe shouldn't have been. And we'll start with Aaron Glenn. Oof, for the Jets, I don't know how he survived, honestly. That was an unacceptable season by my standards. I think no interceptions, one of the worst point differentials in NFL history. And it just sucks because you know that going into this year, that it's not going to be a great year, but to underperform like that is just absolutely brutal. It's going to be tough to appeal a lot of people to come to the Jets at this point just because while you do have all this cap space and all these draft picks, there's not a lot of faith in this coaching staff, and they could end up being a lame duck staff. And for the sake of the Jets, who are going to be taking a quarterback, that's just not the situation you want to be in when you're building a franchise quarterback. There's a good chance that if Dante Moore is the Jets quarterback next year, Glenn is booted and he's in the same spot as Cam Ward, Jackson Dart, looking for a head coach, having to learn a new system, setting the team back. So while I like Glenn, I like the potential of the hire going into it. I don't think he showed enough to stay, but he is going to stay regardless. Another one I'm surprised stayed, Todd Bowles. I mean, that was just an absolute meltdown if you're the Buccaneers. Losing the division in a year that it took a losing record to win it, I just don't think that's an acceptable result, honestly. It was a complete collapse. This team is not the same without Lee and Cohen, and this is leading to some uncomfortable conversations about the Cohen versus Bowles situation. If you're the Buccaneers, you're everything underperformed. And honestly, I'm just surprised he's going to be back another year. You're going to need to somehow turn this team around, even though on paper they're already relatively talented. It's not really the issue. And last but not least, the coach that did survive that I think could still be 50-50, Mike McDaniels. Obviously, I think it's early to say he's safe because they don't have a GM yet. This GM could come in and it's like, wow, don't like him at all. Like, is McDaniels going to be in the search for the GM? Is the GM going to get a final say on McDaniel? I think there's a lot of important factors that go into this decision. Obviously, I think Mike McDaniel has underperformed this year. He definitely came in hot at the end, which is good, but the Tua benching, a lot of questions around him. Obviously, Tyreek Hill's going to be gone. This team is going to look very different, and they're not really in the greatest situation to recover. So maybe they just say, ride it out with McDaniel one more year till this job becomes a little more appealing. Maybe you can clear Tua from the books, or at least he can have some redemption. Either way, I understand the decision to not fire him at this point. Look at the other jobs. There's a lot of chance for reset. If you're Miami, your hands are kind of tied at this point, so I'm not surprised they ended up riding out with McDaniel. But that's all I have for you guys today. Thanks for tuning into this episode. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will keep you posted on who hires who here on ProBallPod.